Are you ready? I'm gonna go get my laptop. Okay, Fuller. So this is probably one of the most popular questions I've gotten so far. I can't think of the context in general. Most people are saying, you know, I started this as a hobby. How do I know when to quit my job? When is it big enough? Or I've been doing this for years, but I can't seem to get it to take off. How do you set your goals? It all comes down to how did you set your goals so that now you guys are hitting them? And so what I'm gonna try to do is do a series of videos. So this will be episode 1, and then I'll try to take you guys through the process, but I'm not gonna get deep into detail. I'm gonna give you the rough idea. If you can't Google and YouTube your way through it from what I'm telling you, then you're just not gonna figure it out, and it's gonna be better that I don't help you get started because you're not gonna win anyways, and that's just the truth. Not everybody should start and run a business. So one of the things that I had to learn and that I keep running into with people is they say, how do I know how to set my goals? Well, the only reason you start a business is to make money, unless if you're into philanthropy and all that stuff. Different story. Don't even watch any more of this video. So if you're trying to make money, you have to decide, why are you trying to make money? I'm trying to make money because I want to make personal income. So the easiest thing I do is I can say to myself, and I'm going to use nothing but fictitious numbers so that you don't get all worried about it. I say that I want to make $50,000 a year. So that's my personal income. And of course, this is before taxes and everything. You still have to pay all your taxes and everything. So if I say I want to make $50,000 a year, and one of the businesses I've been kicking around for fun is to start a business for rentals. So let's say I'm going to start a rental business and I'm going to rent out a whole line of H2 Hummers, and that's all I'm going to rent out. I'm going to get as many of them as I humanly can someday. So today I'm going to start with one of them. It's going to be 2006 H2, and that's what I'm going to start with, times 1. If I'm trying to make $50,000 a year, I have to then turn that into how many days I need to be renting out a Hummer in order to make 50 grand. So one of the most important things you have to do, you have to figure out what your margin is. So if you already know that on your business, you have a 10% margin, you know that by doing simple math, and I'm not going to work through all the math equations, I'm not going to show my work, keep up or go Google how I just did this. But 10% to get to 50,000, you would have to do 500,000 a year in sales. If this is your margin, and this needs to be net, not gross. So this has to be after absolutely every single bill, your insurance, your fuel, your payments for your vehicles, your facility, everything. After everything is paid, your net needs to be that 10% to get to that 50,000. So that 500,000 times 0.1 is going to be the 50,000 you're left with that you get to bring home to your family. So now I know I need 500,000 a year in sales. So now I can reverse engineer this into how many, because what I'm trying to figure out is if I've got this Hummer, how many days do I have to rent out the Hummer in order to get to 500,000 in sales? So I'll pull out my trusty calculator, and to make it real easy math on myself, I'm gonna say that the Hummer rents for $100 per day, and I simply just take the 500,000 divided by 100. It has to rent out 5,000 days per year. So I now know that I can't possibly take my one Hummer and make $50,000 a year renting it at $100 a day. You just saved yourself a whole lot of time trying to build a business that's impossible. There's so many people that don't do this. They get the Hummer, they start charging $100 a day, they sit there and do the math, and they're like, shit, I'm making like $80 a day. That's not true, because out of that $100 a day, you got to your 10% margin because you have to take out fuel, you have to take out insurance, you have to take out the vehicle payment, you have to take out your facility that you're gonna need to work on it, or a front office. Let's say you rent it out of your garage and you don't even need a facility. Do it on Turo or something. Save your payment. but you're gonna have repairs such as tires, brakes. People are gonna be really hard on your shit because that's how they are. So you have to figure out all these costs. In this example, I figured all those costs to be about $90. So that's what left me with $10 of profit, otherwise known as 10 out of 100, 10%. And that's how I got this number. So you could change this math. Let's say that you didn't know your margin, but you want to make $50,000 a year. So you obviously wouldn't know that yet. And now let's say that you're gonna rent it for $100 a day, but it's only gonna cost you like $50 because they have to pay for the fuel. But you've got to make the payment and you've got to make the insurance and everything, and you've worked it out and you found out that it's good. You're gonna burn about $50 of that. So now you have $50 profit, otherwise known as 50%, after you're all said and done with it. So now you're talking 50% profits to get to that 50,000. It's gonna be way easier. It's gonna be 250,000 in sales per year. So now you take the 250,000 and you're like, now I'm really kicking ass. I'm doing 250,000, or I only need 250,000 divided by your $100 per rental. Sweet, now you only need to rent it out 2,500 days in a year. If you haven't picked up on this, there's only 365 days in the year. So you're still impossible. So every time you work this math, you've got to try to figure out, do you have a realistic expectation of what you're trying to accomplish? So when we started with the Hummer rental, I'll use a real example. I was able to go on Turo.com where you can rent out your vehicle. And what do we list it for, Fuller? I think 125 a day. I was able to list it for 125 a day. And then Turo took 25% of that. So 125 times 0.75 is what I get. So I got $93.75. Well, it's $10 to wash it because they aren't required to wash it, and you got to wash it for the next person. I needed to pay somebody to, so this is wash. I needed to pay somebody to drop off and pick up because a lot of them it's not included. And then let's just say that that was an hour each direction. Let's be cheap and only pay $10 an hour. Now you're taking another $20 off of that. So now you're at $63.75. And let's say, we're not even gonna figure out the vehicle payment. We're just gonna stop right there. Let's take 63. So now I'm making $63.75 out of the 125. So I take $63.75 divided by 125. That's 51%. So I'm making 51%, and that we'll call that my gross profit, because I still have to pay for the Hummer payment. I still have to pay for oil changes, brakes, repairs such as exhaust. Another thing that's going to wear out is tires. So let's say I work all of that out and I decide that this is going to cost me, let's call it $100 a month. And let's say I really believe that I can rent it out 20 times a month. So I can divide that by 20 rents per month. And I'm talking $5 per rent. I have to take off another $5. And then I do the same math with the insurance, which is gonna be fairly high. Let's say that it's $100 a month, so it's the same thing. Take off another $5. And you just have to keep taking off the money until you figure out what you have left when you rent it out. So what I found out when I did it is I was gonna end up with like $20, $25. So now I've got this vehicle that's racking up miles and I know it's running out of life, so it's basically the depreciation is clipping right along to make $20 every time somebody rents it. So let's say that I make $20 every time somebody rents it and I wanna make $50,000 a year. I can now take $50,000 divided by 20 times every time it rents. It has to rent out $2,500 in a year. I'm at the same math again, that per year, rents per year. It's impossible again. So many people just don't do the math to figure out what it is. Now the way you can fix that is that's $20 per rent. What if I bought 10 Hummers? Now, because this is per vehicle, most of this stuff, it's the same math. Now, if I have 10 Hummers, I can rent those out. I'm making $20 per Hummer times 10 Hummers. I'm making $200. I shouldn't really do it this way, but I'm still going to because I know I'm confusing you. It's $200 if they were to rent every day, and let's pretend that they rent out about 200 days out of the year, out of 365 days. So I have $200 times 200 days. I can make $40,000 a year. Because what I'm saying is I'm gonna rent it 200 out of 365 days in the year, and I make $200. That assumes all 10 Hummers have to be rented 200 days out of the year. Aggressive as shit, and I still only make 40 grand. So that's not realistic. So every time I keep working on this business model, I realize that it'll never make enough money to make me happy, because I'm only gonna make that $20 per time. Let's say that you did it all yourself, blah, 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 and you could make $84 every time it rents. If it only rents 3 days a week, you're talking $240 a week. And you're not gonna do that every single week, so you have to probably do it times 50 weeks if you're really awesome. You'll make 12 grand a year. That'll be almost enough to cover the Hummer you're gonna wear out every year because you're renting it out constantly and racking miles up on it. This is why it's so important to start at the beginning when you're gonna start a business and decide how much do I wanna make in a year? Because then it's just math from there to figure out what it'll take to make you happy, to make you hit your goal. So what I've done is I've taken and made a calculator I made a spreadsheet that's a giant calculator. And what it'll do is I literally put in here, put your business name up there and your projections, and it's each month. And then it looks at, let's say you have product sales, but you also have services. Let's say that you know that when you sell products, you're at 10%. So if you have 50,000 in January in sales, you'll make 5 grand. And let's say, I tried to use touchscreen fuller. Let's say that your labor is 10% of your products. So 10% of your products you also get labor for. Let's say this is an install shop. Then you'd have $4,500. So combined, you have 5,000 coming in from products, 4,500 coming in for your labor, because your labor's at a better rate. And you'll see I've just built in formulas in here that figure that at 10% of sales, and then labor is 90% that goes to the bottom line. So you're taking in $9,500 a month. That sounds awesome. You're like, man, if I can just get to 50,000 in sales, I'll have 5,000 in labor, because 10% is typically, I'm getting labor. I'm bringing $9,500 a month. Oh my God, that's a lot of money. That's like over $100,000 a year. I'm gonna be rich. So then you have to start figuring out your expenses. So you're gonna have payroll. Let's say you have 3 employees, and you're inside here, you'll see it's a formula, $15 an hour, 8 hours a day, 21 days in a month, working days. And then you start to figure that out for your 3 employees. You're gonna have some sort of benefits. You have to pay workers' comp and all that stuff. So even if you have minimal benefits, it's still gonna be about 25%. So now you add up your 3 employees and that 25%, and your salaries are at $94.50. You probably have internet, you'll have some rent. Oftentimes it'll be triple net where you have to pay the taxes, heat and electric, water. You're gonna have phones or something, cell phones, something. Tools, shop supplies, you're always gonna be going through different materials, buying more tools. So you got another $4,500. Do some sort of advertising. If you do $50 a month and some Google or Facebook stuff, it's another $100. And then let's say you're doing shows and travel, you'd have to add those things on here. And then you're gonna have to have an accountant. So I usually just take like $25, put it across the whole year so that I have money for my taxes when I'm done. You have sales tax coming in. You'll just wanna always remember that money's not yours. It has to be turned back over to the state that you live in. So obviously it'll come in, but then it'll go right back out and zero itself, but it's just a good reminder. So you end up with your total expenses. Well, then what you wanna do is take that total money that you had when you started. Remember, our sales brought us $9,500, and then you take your total expenses and you can start to figure out what is left. And obviously you can see if we're only bringing in $9,500 and we're spending 14 grand, we're gonna fall short by $4,500. So this business as it is set up to fail. Now what you can do is start figuring out, so what are my goals? So now what I can do, because I made this calculator, is I can come in here and say, what if I take my sales from 50,000 to 80,000? I put the 80,000 in there, and now you can see that it's going to increase my income because I'm running the same margins, and then I have all my expenses again, and I can scroll all the way to what I would call the bottom line, and now I'm making $1,130 a month. So when you make a calculator like this that just comprehends your income minus your expenses, you can just sit here and do the math, and then you can find out how much money you're gonna make as the business owner. I would say that anyone that can't figure out how to do this or can't decide how much money they wanna make, you're just not ready. Because if you can't figure out a simple table like that, the whole rest of this journey is gonna be an absolute nightmare, because you're not gonna understand the math, you're not gonna know money in, money out. If you can't comprehend money in, money out and what's left for me, you're never gonna comprehend putting money into investments or starting to take depreciation or the long term of dragging stuff out, or even buying inventory and realizing that you have to claim that inventory on your taxes and pay income tax on it, but it isn't even sold yet. So it's not money in your pocket, it's just stuff sitting out there waiting to be turned back into money. So that's where the whole business side of it is. If you don't have that and you don't have somebody that can mentor and teach you that, it's gonna be a really long road of starting your own business. So I think that's the most of the questions I've been getting. What I can do in the next one then is say, let's take a real example. Let's not do all doom and gloom. When I started custom offsets, let's say I'm starting custom offsets and I'm saying right off the bat that I want to make $100,000 a year, because that'll make it worth my time to work 18 hours a day. And let's say that I'm gonna make 20% on all of my sales. Then I can just sit here and do the math. I need to do 500,000 in sales. So if I know that that's my margin, and I know that the product I'm selling, let's say wheel and tire packages, hypothetically, are $2,500 per, I know that I need to sell 200 packages. So this is 500,000 per year, but this is my margin. This is 500,000 per year sales. This was my wage. This is how much money Sean wants to make. So I need to, this is per package. If I'm selling them at $2,500 on average, I know I need 200 packages per year. So that means 200 divided by 12 months in the year. That's 16 per month. Or what I can do is, I would probably do that. I'm gonna round it up. I don't know why I rounded down for that's not like me. 17 packages a month divided by, it's an online business, so it can run every single day, 0.5 per day. And a lot of times it's actually 0.6. I don't know why I keep doing that, Fuller. So if it's 0.6 per day, 7 days in a week, 4 to 5 per week. So I now know that here's my goal. I need to sell 5 packages a week, or about 1 a day. That will give me way better than my target. Well, if I did 1 a day, that'd be stellar. So this would be my stretch goal, but I definitely need 5 a week so that I can get 20 to 22 a month. And then that backs into my sales and allows me to make a little bit more than my 100,000 per year wage. So it's just a matter of math, but you have to know this. So if this is I now have metric 1. Metric number 1 is sales, 500,000 a year. Now I have metric number 2. I need to sell 5 packages a week. And I would often want to turn that into metric 2. A is 5 packages a week, but B, I have to make sure that those packages are staying at that price. So 5 times the 2,500, I know I need about 12,500 per week in sales of this item that runs 20%. So that's how I can figure out, if I look at this and I say there is no frickin' way I can sell 5 wheel and tire packages a week, I shouldn't even start. Or I should say, you know what? That was a dream. I'm comfortable making 50,000, because now I can cut all of this in half, down to 100, down to 10, 0.5 a day, 2 to 3 a week, about 6 grand a week. And now I can say, let's take off running. This will be year 1. And now I can figure that year 2, if I want to make 100,000, all of this is times 2, assuming my margins hold, and then I win. If you can't do this math, don't start a business. Really, really don't, because it's just going to be really depressing. Because you're going to think you're making money, and then it's all going to spend. You're going to end up with nothing at the end of the year, and you're going to be really pissed off and depressed and give up, because that's how life works. So what I want to do next time is help you guys see that once you take all of that, you now have metric 1. I'm going to go with the 500,000, and then I had metric 2, 5 sets per week, 12,500 in sales per week. These are your main drivers. Now you have to ask yourself, what are the leading indicators? And you have to start asking, what are the things that when I see them happen, I know I'm going to get these sales? These leading indicators might be social media, that you're seeing more and more buzz on social media because that's increasing your audience. That's a stretch one. That's not as easy to see. It might be simple stuff like your website visits, if you know how to track that. People in the door, if you're a physical location. The number of quotes you're giving out, if you're a quote service. You have to figure out what are the things that when these happen, so if my site visit goes up by 50% for the month, do I also see my sales go up every single time that happens? That means that you understand that this drives that. And that's how you start to figure out what your next level of measures are, which are your leading indicators that lead up to that. So when Walmart is trying to figure out if they're gonna hit their sales, they will start to watch either the people through their door or the reach that they're having with their ads, because that's what's gonna drive the people that walk through the door next week. So we'll do that, and then we'll do one other thing, is we'll spread your metrics out so that you realize that you must have a safety measure, you must have a quality measure, quality or service, ideally both. You wanna have cost measures to keep your costs down, save your margin, and then you need a delivery measure. So in the next round, we'll do that. And then once you have all this, you can start using the daily and weekly tools that you've seen on a lot of the previous episodes. That's all I have to say about that.